Nilfgaard, the Great Realm, Conquerors of the world, a monster that sweeps all enemies from its path in an avalanche. For the lesser must die, and in the end only one great nation will be left. From the mouth of the Alba River to the spurs of the Dragon Mountains, the Nilfgaard Empire will stretch across the continent. Two hearts of the legendary lords froze at the sight of the endless line of soldiers in black armor. Their ranks stretched from one side of the horizon to the other. Black banners with a golden sun fluttered above their heads. They obeyed the slightest order from their commanders. Discipline is at an all-time high. Every member of these ranks is willing to sacrifice themselves for a common goal, to win another battle. For the sake of the Great Sun and the great Nilfgaard Empire across the continent, how can one resist such a force? Even the greatest minds have yet to find an answer to that question. The Nilfgaard Empire can only collapse from within. There is no comparable external force. But how did it come to this? Nilfgaard could not have been so great forever. Where are the roots of this mighty realm? What individuals created this ruthless war machine? It is time to answer all these questions in one video. Today, in 20 minutes, we will try to gather all the available information and tell you the complete story of the Nilfgaard Empire, from its beginnings to its reign over the continent. The old Witcher is here. Before we begin, as always, we'd like to thank our patrons for making us believe that our channel is on the right track. Thank you guys. And if you want to join these awesome people, support us on Patreon or become a sponsor on YouTube, we promise you even more awesome content about the Witcher universe. But anyway, brace yourselves because we are about to tell you the entire history of Nilfgaard in just 20 minutes. Long Ages. The roots of Nilfgaard's history lie far back in time. In the days where humans were just beginning to settle in a new world, they built young kingdoms, fought among themselves, and tried to gain as much power as they could. So hundreds of years ago, when countries were ruled by people whose names are already lost to history, there was a coup d'etat in a young Centurion state, and a ruling family that was to be overthrown fled south with their associates. There, in the far south, the exiles found untouched, uninhabited lands. Lands that were not so filled with monsters. Lands that were destined to become the Nilfgaard Empire in the future. But the exiles certainly had a hard time at first. They looked angrily north to where their home had once been, where they were no longer welcome. They dreamed of revenge, but to do that, they had to survive. They needed allies, and those allies were quickly found. Elves, but not ordinary elves. Not the ones the humans had encountered in the north. Other elves. They called themselves the Black Shade. History does not tell us what these Black Shade were like, how they differed from ordinary elves, how they came to the far south, and why they decided to help humans. The only fact that remains is that the community of exiles from the central state survived because of these elves, and later, when the humans became stronger, they assimilated the Black Shade, mixed with them, and became one people. The noblest and oldest families of Nilfgaard still have some of the elven heritage in their blood. This is why they are so different from the people of the northern kingdoms in their beliefs and aspirations. Humans have adopted the elves' religions, customs, and even their language. The language of the Nilfgaardians, even after hundreds of years, is similar to the language of the Enshade elves. Anyway, after some time, the first state arose on this island. Not too big, but very tightly knit. Its people were mostly patriots of their land. This state was called Nilfgaard, and though Nilfgaard had rulers in the manner of ordinary kings, the top of the young power's political pyramid was the Senate. The original Senate determined all of Nilfgaard's policies, and the rule of the Senate lasted for at least 100 years. That is, until a strong and charismatic leader rose to rule Nilfgaard, the first emperor of Nilfgaard named Torres. Early Empire. When Torres began to rule in Nilfgaard, he quickly made sure that the power of the Senate became purely formal and its functions largely ceremonial. He had a clear plan for the direction of Nilfgaard's development, and for a start he decided to establish a special religion among the inhabitants of the land. This religion became the cult of the Great Sun. This cult came to humans during their intermingling with the Black Shade. The elves of the south had worshipped the Great Sun for many centuries and carried with them the idea that sooner or later, all the peoples of the world would have to recognize the power of the all-knowing luminary. This idea fit very well with the concept of the state that Torres saw in his dreams, and so the first emperor of Nilfgaard did his best to strengthen the cult in the society of his subjects. At the same time, he reformed the army. He provided the army with better weapons and instilled in the soldiers a fanatical belief in a single king, so that their obedience to orders would be unquestioned. Thanks to Torres, everyone in the empire believed that they were a decent civilization. They believed that they had to spread the cult of the Great Sun and true Nilfgaard culture to all the ignorant in the north by any means necessary, that there were stupid, uncouth Nordlings who needed to be taught order for the greater good. The belief in the state of affairs became unquestioned, and calling Nilfgaard an empire and himself its emperor, Torres, having gathered an army of the first generation of specially trained soldiers, moved north to bring civilization to the rest of the world, even if it meant starting a war and destroying all the infidel cities first. It might even be easier to build a civilization from the ashes. The first campaign of the Nilfgaardian army began, but the first battles and negotiations did not go so well. Near the borders of Nilfgaard there were several quite strong states: Etolia, Emhyr, Vicovaro, states that believed they could live well without the cult of the Great Sun. The most principled were the Emhyr, and it was with them that the first conflict arose. The battles went on for several years, but there was no shift to one side or the other. For every Nilfgaard victory, the Gemarians responded with their own military success. The conflict seemed to have no meaning. But then Torres died, and in his place came a representative of a noble family, Fergus var Emreis, and things moved much faster. Under Fergus, Nilfgaard not only called itself an empire, it became an empire. A strong and formidable one, a state whose presence on its borders made all the kings of the continent tremble. Fergus var Emreis, his reforms, and the usurper's rebellion. It began again with reforms. When Fergus came to power, he realized that he lacked the military resources to realize his imperial ambitions. At that time, Nilfgaard had a loyal but not too large army, so the problem was solved radically. At one point, Fergus introduced absolute equality into the state. That is, both men and women of the realm were considered mere fighting units that should serve for the good of the realm. Many girls and women were then recruited into the army where the same total equality existed. Everyone slept in the same barracks, ate the same food, and endured the same stresses. The Nilfgaardian army quickly grew in numbers, and with fresh troops, Fergus began a new military campaign against his neighbors. Fergus's tactical genius added to the power of the black-colored army. He was an experienced military leader, and he chose equally talented commanders for his regiments. Even if a soldier had to be pulled from the ranks, Fergus did so when he saw great potential in a man. Nilfgaard began to win battle after battle. Etolia and Emhyr fell quickly, and in Vicovaro the people saw the fate of their neighbors and decided not to resist. The wise rulers of this land simply signed the vassalage, thus avoiding thousands upon thousands of deaths. Nilfgaard became an empire. Already in the new provinces, Fergus was doing his best to win over cooperative lords and get rid of stubborn nobles. The common people, in turn, were brutally implanted with the belief in the Great Sun. The empire quickly became a single organism of like-minded people. In addition to that, the belief that Nilfgaard was the beacon of civilization and that it should share this civilization with all others continued to spread, even if they don't want to. And so the people began to feel superior to the foreigners. It became prestigious to be a Nilfgaardian. One could call oneself a Nilfgaardian with one's head held high. Fergus var Emreis was also a good politician. He quickly realized that he needed allies and went to the farthest north to find them. Nilfgaard made a treaty with Cover and Pavis, the richest states known. In those days, no one risked a quarrel with Cover. Too many lands depended on the northernmost kingdom for their economy, and so the nations did not help those states that were attacked by Nilfgaard. Each of the states had to fight the invader alone. Nilfgaard dominated, but no matter how good things were, no matter how the empire developed, there were those who could not get enough, even among those who owed their allegiance to Fergus. For example, one of the commanders who had been raised from the lowest ranks by var Emreis felt that the emperor was not using the army to its full potential. He had risen to the position of general and simply did not understand some of his master's orders. Thanks to his innate talents, the commander was able to emerge victorious even from seemingly lost battles, and at some point his patience broke. He decided that he would take away the power from the mad Fergus, who did not understand what was happening at the front. He decided to make a real coup. The conditions for this were very good. The main troops of var Emreis were at the front, and among the noble families of the empire there were many who hated the emperor. Fergus still had full power over the state, and to be in such a totalitarian state as a noble representative of an old aristocratic family, let's just say it's at least unpleasant. That is why the general who planned the rebellion had a lot of allies. On one quiet night, the conspirators overwhelmed the Nilfgaard Lord's guards and seized Fergus himself and his entire family. They tried to force the king to sign an abdication, given the crown to the usurper as if it were legitimate. For this he was promised to be spared, but the emperor was proud and would not yield even to torture, even when his son was brought to the emperor in the end. When the traitorous sorcerer Bratens turned the boy into a horrible, hedgehog-like monster in front of the Lord, even then Fergus would not willingly give up his crown, and so it was decided to kill him. The usurper drew his own blade and tore the crown from the bloody body of his former master. If rebellions arose, he would crush them. He knows how to do it. The traitor was absolutely sure he was right, sure that Fergus was too weak for the crown, that he could not handle the responsibility of ruling the realm. For Nilfgaard to move forward, a strong hand is needed, the hand of the usurper, and one of the aristocrats. Well, soon they regretted their support of the usurper's rebellion. Reign of the usurper. The one who murdered Fergus var Emreis will forever be known in Nilfgaardian history as the usurper. No one will ever know the traitor's true name again, but we are getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. The period of the usurper's reign is very ambivalent. On the one hand, it was the usurper who led the empire into the Age of Dawn, to its greatest military victories, to the geometric expansion of its territory. He laid the foundation of a state that was already truly feared in every corner of the continent. On the other hand, it was the period of the usurper's reign that was marked by the harshest regime for the common people. He punished any disobedience, trusted no one, and tried to control absolutely all processes by himself, leading to the fact that he was hated by literally everyone around him, even the army who had achieved incredible victories under his rule. To put it mildly, Nilfgaard conquered Ebbing, Metinna, and Nazir under the usurper. Nilfgaard became a colossus on the world's political stage. But things were not so good at home. The usurper's toughness was legendary. He imposed harsh military laws on the entire realm. The slightest disobedience was punished by flogging, and more serious offenses were inevitably followed by mutilation or painful death. The usurper thus attempted to bring order to an empire that had fallen into chaos, but the result was quite the opposite. He did everything possible to give his rule the appearance of legitimacy and to strengthen his authority. In every great city he erected a statue of himself, paid poets thousands of florins for flatteries, and ordered historians to find documents proving that he was really the illegitimate son of Emperor Taurus. And anyone who mentioned his true origins, the tyrant would tear out their tongue with his own hand. Of course, they could not last for long. Very soon conspiracies began to be woven around the usurper, even in his closest circle. Since the usurper himself had come to power through a bloody coup, he knew where to expect a blow, and many plots were uncovered and the instigators executed. But this could not go on forever, and already the usurper was deposed by the very son of Fergus var Emreis, the one who was turned into a monster, a humanoid hedgehog. His name was Emhyr var Emreis. Emhyr var Emreis. The story of Emperor Emhyr var Emreis is told in detail in the books and games of the Witcher series, so we will only cover it briefly in this video. Nevertheless, we will definitely make a separate detailed video about this character, because he definitely deserves it. Anyway, today's story is not only about Emhyr, so let us get started. The young, cursed Emhyr, in the form of a humanoid hedgehog, learned that he could find his salvation in the north, in a state called Cintra. There he wandered the forests for a long time, until one day fate brought him together with King Ragnar of Cintra. The king was in trouble. While hunting, he lost his way in the forest, fell into a wolf pit, and broke his leg. The horse died. Emhyr rescued Ragnar, and the latter promised everything to the urchin in return. So Emhyr said, "You will give what you have, but do not know," the right of surprise. It turned out that Ragnar's wife was pregnant, and the king promised the unknown monster his daughter. Many years passed, the king died, and his wife, Queen Calanthe, took over, and his daughter grew up, and Emhyr came for her. Of course, the mother didn't want her daughter Pavetta to marry a monster, but destiny cannot be prevented. Emhyr and Pavetta loved each other, and this love broke Emhyr's curse, removing the evil spell from him, and turned him into an ordinary man. What happened next? The pregnant Princess Pavetta, the Witcher Geralt, who also demanded the right of surprise, the so-called friendship with the sorcerer Vilgefortz. It turned out that Ciri is a child of the elder blood, just like her mother Pavetta. She must save the world, and Emhyr must cast the world into the fire, for he's the true emperor of Nilfgaard. After regaining his strength, Emhyr contacted the aristocrats who had rebelled against the usurper. With them, he returned to the realm, staged a successful coup, and killed the usurper. He rid the world of the one who had killed his father. His daughter Ciri remained in Cintra. Pavetta died through Emhyr's fault when he tried to fake his death. because no one in Cintra knew the former humanoid hedgehog's real name and past, and Emhyr became the Emperor of Nilfgaard. He reclaimed his father's coveted throne and went to war in the north. Nilfgaard cannot exist without war. It cannot feed itself in times of peace. Plundering and devastating the enemies of the realm is a great source of income. Emhyr had no choice. From the moment he took the throne, the man in his soul died. He now belonged to the realm. Emhyr was destined to become the most legendary ruler in Nilfgaard's history. The White Flame was destined to dance on the barrows of his enemies. He went to war in the north, and only Cintra was left before him. The First Northern War began. Queen Calanthe died. Daughter Ciri narrowly escaped the burning of Cintra, and the battle at Sodden Hill decided the situation. But here, at this point, our story ends, for we finally came to the actual history of the Nilfgaard Empire, its current days. Stories that unfold in the pages of the books of the Witcher series, in the Netflix series called The Witcher, and in the gameplay of the Witcher games by the polished studio CD Projekt Red. This story is also being developed and worked on our channel. Click the bell to not miss any of our videos about the Witcher universe. Leave likes, write comments. All this helps a lot to promote our videos. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that, and see you soon when the Your Witcher speaks once more.